The graduation party was in full swing in our family's backyard in suburban Chicago. The smell of barbecue mixed with the sound of laughter as relatives and family friends celebrated my younger brother Marcus's achievement, his MBA from Northwestern. I stood by the dessert table, adjusting my simple black dress, watching everyone congratulate him while I tried to blend into the background. At 32, I was the eldest of 3 children, but somehow I always felt like an outsider in my own family. My sister Claire, 28, was the successful lawyer who'd just made partner at her firm. Marcus, 26, was now the business graduate with a 6-figure job waiting for him. And then there was me, Sarah, the community college graduate who worked as a social worker in the city's most challenging neighborhoods. My father, Robert Harrison, a retired bank executive, moved through the crowd with his characteristic confidence. His graying hair was perfectly styled, and his polo shirt was pristine despite the July heat. He'd always been the kind of man who commanded respect in every room he entered, and today was no different. "Sarah, honey, could you help me get more ice from the garage?" my mother Linda asked as she approached with an empty bucket. Her smile was warm but tired, the kind of expression that came from hosting family gatherings for decades. "Of course, Mom," I replied, grateful for something to do. As I walked toward the garage, I could hear my father's booming voice beginning what sounded like a speech. "If I could have everyone's attention for just a moment," he called out, tapping his beer bottle with a fork. The crowd gradually quieted, turning toward him with expectant faces. I paused at the garage door, the ice bucket in my hands, somehow knowing I should listen to what came next. "I want to take a moment to talk about my children," Dad continued, his voice carrying across the yard. "As a father, there's nothing more important than seeing your kids succeed and make something of themselves." My stomach tightened. I'd heard variations of this speech before. "Claire," he said, gesturing toward my sister, who stood near the pool with her husband, "you've made me incredibly proud. Partner at 28. That's extraordinary. Your dedication, your intelligence, your drive, it's everything I hoped for." Claire smiled graciously, raising her wine glass slightly in acknowledgement. A few relatives clapped. "And Marcus," Dad's voice grew even warmer, "MBA from Northwestern, already lined up with Goldman Sachs. You've shown that hard work and ambition pay off. I couldn't be prouder." More applause. Marcus grinned, clearly basking in the attention. Then my father's eyes swept the crowd, and I saw them land on me. For just a moment I hoped, that he might include me in his praise. Maybe he'd mention my work with at-risk youth, or the families I'd helped navigate the foster care system, or even just acknowledge that I was there, part of this family. Instead, his expression grew serious, almost contemplative. "You know," he said, his voice carrying a weight that made the entire party go silent, "everyone here has made me proud." He paused, letting that sink in. "Everyone here has made me proud, but you." His finger pointed directly at me. The ice bucket slipped from my hands, crashing to the concrete with a sound that seemed to echo through the sudden silence. Ice cubes scattered across the garage floor, but I barely noticed. The world had narrowed to just those words, hanging in the air like a physical blow. "Sarah," he continued, his voice not cruel but matter of fact, as if he was discussing the weather. "You had the same opportunities as your siblings, the same education, the same support, the same love, but you chose differently." I felt every eye in the backyard turn toward me. Aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends, all of them staring. Some looked uncomfortable, others curious, as if they were watching a car accident unfold. While your brother and sister pursued careers that would make any parent proud, you chose to work in social services, making $30,000 a year, living in a studio apartment, no husband, no children at 32. Each word felt like a small knife. I don't understand where I went wrong with you." The silence stretched on forever. I could hear the hum of the neighbor's air conditioning, the distant sound of traffic, my own heart pounding in my ears. "Dad," Claire said softly, but he held up a hand. "I'm not saying this to be cruel," he continued, his tone almost gentle now, which somehow made it worse. "I'm saying it because I love you, but disappointment is disappointment, and I won't pretend otherwise." I stood frozen, unable to move, unable to speak. Part of me wanted to defend myself, to explain that my work mattered, that I'd helped dozens of families, that I'd chosen purpose over profit, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I found myself remembering being 7 years old, bringing home a drawing from school that I was so proud of, only to have Dad barely glance at it before turning his attention to Marcus's first steps, or being 15 and winning a poetry contest, only to have him miss the ceremony because he was at Claire's debate tournament. "I think," Dad said finally, that maybe it's time you considered what you really want from life, because what you're doing now, it's not enough, not for this family. The party slowly resumed its buzz of conversation, but quieter now, more subdued. People began to drift away from me, as if my failure might be contagious. I bent down mechanically and began picking up the scattered ice cubes, my hands shaking. When I stood up, I saw Marcus approaching with an uncomfortable expression. "Sarah, I'm sorry," he said quietly. I didn't know he was going to say that. "It's fine," I managed, though my voice sounded strange to my own ears. "It's your day. Congratulations." But it wasn't fine. As I walked back into the house, ice bucket refilled, I realized something had fundamentally shifted. The careful balance I'd maintained for years, trying to be part of a family that had never truly accepted me, had finally cracked. That night, as the last guests left and the family cleaned up, I sat in my childhood bedroom, staring at the wall covered with participation ribbons and second-place certificates. Not a single first-place trophy in sight. At 2 a.m., I made a decision that would change everything. I pulled out my phone and typed a text to my supervisor. "Hi, Janet. I need to talk to you about the Portland position. Is it still available?" The response came faster than I expected. "Yes, and I think you'd be perfect for it. We can discuss details Monday." I set the phone down and began pulling clothes from my dresser. If I was such a disappointment, maybe it was time to disappoint them properly. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my mother's voice drifting up from the kitchen below, probably talking to my father about the previous night. I'd spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, replaying those words over and over. "Everyone here has made me proud, but you." Sunlight streamed through the blinds of my childhood bedroom, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air like tiny, weightless disappointments. I sat up slowly, feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. The Portland job application was still open on my phone, cursor blinking in the empty message field. I could hear movement downstairs, the familiar sounds of my parents' morning routine. Dad reading the Tribune while Mom made coffee, the same ritual they'd followed for 30 years. Normally, I'd go down and pretend nothing had happened. Maybe make small talk about the weather or ask if they needed help with anything. Not today. Instead, I found myself opening the photo albums I'd found in my closet the night before, page after page of family memories. But as I looked closer, I began to notice a pattern I'd been blind to for years. Claire's high school graduation, front and center, beaming smile, both parents flanking her with obvious pride. Marcus's college acceptance letter, framed and hanging in the hallway downstairs. My community college graduation, a single photo, slightly blurry, tucked between pictures of family vacations. There was Claire at 8, winning her first spelling bee, with Dad lifting her up on his shoulders. Marcus at 10, scoring his first soccer goal, with both parents cheering from the sidelines. And me at 12, reading my winning poem at the school assembly to an empty auditorium, because Dad had a business meeting and Mom was helping Claire with her science project. The memories came flooding back with startling clarity. How many times had I been the afterthought? How many times had my achievements been overshadowed by my siblings' successes? How many times had I swallowed my disappointment and told myself it didn't matter? A knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. "Sarah, breakfast is ready," Mom called softly. "I'm not hungry," I replied, my voice hoarse. "Honey, about last night." "Mom, please, I just need some time." I heard her footsteps retreat, and I felt a stab of guilt. None of this was Mom's fault. She'd always been the mediator, the one who tried to smooth over Dad's harsh words or make excuses for his behavior. But even she had her favorites, though she'd never admit it. I remembered being 25, telling my parents I'd been accepted into a master's program for social work. Dad had barely looked up from his newspaper. "More school for a job that doesn't pay?" he'd said. "Maybe you should think about something more practical." Claire had gotten her law degree the same year. They'd thrown her a party. My phone buzzed. A text from Claire. "Are you okay? I tried calling earlier. Last night was rough." I stared at the message for a long moment before typing back, "I'm fine, just processing." Another message appeared immediately. "Dad feels bad about what he said. He's just worried about your future." That was classic Claire. Always trying to fix things. Always making excuses for Dad's behavior. She meant well, but she'd never understand what it felt like to be on the receiving end of that disappointment. I typed back, "He's not worried about my future. He's embarrassed by my present." The typing indicators appeared and disappeared several times before Claire's response came. "That's not fair. You know he loves you." Love, such a complicated word in the Harrison household. Dad loved us, sure, but his love came with conditions. Claire met those conditions. Marcus met those conditions. I never had. I got out of bed and walked to my old desk, where I'd spent countless hours as a teenager doing homework, writing in my journal, dreaming about the future. I pulled out a pen and a piece of paper and began writing. Dear Dad, last night you said that everyone at the party made you proud but me. I want you to know that I heard you. I heard every word, and I understand exactly what you meant. You're right. I chose differently. I chose to work with families who have nothing, to help kids who've been failed by every system that was supposed to protect them. I chose to make $30,000 a year because I believe that what I do matters, even if you don't. I chose to live in a studio apartment in the city because I wanted to be close to the people I serve. I chose to remain unmarried because I haven't found someone who shares my values. I chose to focus on my career instead of having children because I see every day what happens when people have kids they're not prepared for. These weren't failures, Dad. They were choices. And until last night, I was proud of them. But you've made it clear that my choices don't align with your definition of success. You've made it clear that I'm an embarrassment to this family. So I'm making another choice. I'm leaving. I folded the letter and set it aside. It felt both liberating and terrifying to put those words on paper. My phone rang. Marcus. Hey, he said when I answered. I just wanted to check on you. Last night was intense. That's one word for it, I said, walking to the window. Dad was out in the backyard, cleaning up the remnants of the party. Even from this distance, I could see the confident set of his shoulders, the way he moved with purpose. He'd probably already forgotten about what he'd said. Look, I think Dad was just trying to motivate you, Marcus said. You know how he is. He thinks tough love works. Tough love? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Marcus, he told a room full of people that I'm the only one who hasn't made him proud. That's not tough love. That's public humiliation. I know it sounded harsh. It was harsh. It was cruel. And it was the truth, at least from his perspective. I sat back down on the bed. I'm done pretending it doesn't matter. What does that mean? I looked at the letter on my desk, then at the Portland job posting still open on my phone. It means I'm going to stop trying to fit into a family that doesn't want me. Sarah, come on. We're family. We all want you here. Do you? Because I can't remember the last time any of you called me just to talk. I can't remember the last time Dad asked about my work without making some comment about my salary. I can't remember the last time I felt like I belonged in this house. The silence stretched between us. Finally, Marcus said, I'm sorry. I didn't realize. It's not your fault, I said, and I meant it. You and Claire are everything Dad wanted in children. You're successful, you're driven, you make good money, you fit the mold. I never did. But that doesn't mean. It means exactly what it means, Marcus. I'm 32 years old, and I'm still trying to earn love from people who made their opinion of me clear a long time ago. After I hung up, I sat in the quiet of my childhood room, surrounded by the evidence of a lifetime of coming in second. The participation ribbons, the consolation prizes, the good effort certificates. All of it suddenly felt like a museum of lowered expectations. I picked up my phone and opened the text thread with my supervisor. This time, I didn't hesitate. Janet, I'd like to formally apply for the Portland position. When can we discuss the details? The response came within minutes. How about tomorrow morning? I had a feeling you might be interested. The position starts in 3 weeks if you want it. 3 weeks. Enough time to pack up my life, find a new apartment, start over completely. The thought should have terrified me, but instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Excitement. I was finally going to stop apologizing for being myself. The next few days passed in a strange, suspended reality. I moved through the house like a ghost, avoiding family dinners and keeping conversations brief. Dad acted like nothing had happened, which somehow made it worse. Mom kept shooting me worried glances, but she didn't push. Claire texted constantly, trying to arrange a lunch or coffee to talk things through. Marcus called twice, but I let both calls go to voicemail. I had a phone interview with the Portland office on Tuesday morning. The position was with a nonprofit organization that worked with homeless families, helping them navigate housing assistance and job training programs. The pay was actually slightly better than my current job, and they offered full relocation assistance. We've heard excellent things about your work in Chicago, the program director, Maria Santos, said during our video call. Your supervisor speaks very highly of your dedication and your success rate with difficult cases. It felt surreal to hear someone praise my work. When was the last time anyone in my family had said something positive about my career? I'm very interested in the position, I told her. I think a change of scenery would be good for me. Excellent. We'd like to offer you the position, with a start date of August 15th. That gives you about 3 weeks to relocate. Does that work for you? I looked around my childhood bedroom, at the faded posters, and the twin bed with its worn comforter. Yes, I said. That works perfectly. After the call, I sat in my car in the parking lot of a coffee shop, staring at the signed offer letter on my phone. It was really happening. I was leaving Chicago, leaving my family, leaving behind 32 years of trying to measure up to impossible standards. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. Dinner tonight at 6. Mom's making pot roast. Don't be late. I stared at the message for a long moment. No, please. No, we'd love to have you join us. Just a command. As if the other night had never happened. As if his words hadn't changed everything. I typed back. I'll be there. But this time I had something to say. Dinner was exactly as I'd expected. Dad at the head of the table, holding court with stories about his golf game and opinions about the market. Mom bustling around, making sure everyone had enough food. Claire talking about a big case she'd just won. Marcus describing his new apartment in Lincoln Park. I sat quietly, cutting my pot roast into smaller and smaller pieces, waiting for the right moment. Sarah, you've been awfully quiet lately, Mom said, finally turning her attention to me. Everything okay at work? Actually, I said, setting down my fork. I have some news about work. Dad looked up from his plate. Oh? Finally decide to look for something better? The casual dismissal in his tone made my chest tighten. I got a job offer, I said. A really good one. That's wonderful, honey, Mom said, beaming. What company? It's a nonprofit in Portland. They work with homeless families, helping them find housing and job training. I looked directly at Dad. They offered me the position of senior caseworker. It's a 20% raise, full benefits, and relocation assistance. Claire lowered her wine glass. Portland? As in Oregon? As in Oregon. The silence that followed was deafening. Dad's expression had gone from mild interest to something approaching alarm. Portland, he said slowly. You're thinking about moving to Portland. I'm not thinking about it. I accepted the offer. I start in 3 weeks. Mom's hand flew to her chest. 3 weeks? Sarah, that's so sudden. Why didn't you discuss this with us? Because it's my decision, I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. I'm 32 years old. I don't need permission to make career choices. But Portland is so far away, Mom continued. And you don't know anyone there. What if you hate it? What if the job doesn't work out? Then I'll figure it out, like I always do. Dad had been quiet, but now he set down his fork with deliberate precision. This is about the other night, isn't it? This is about a lot of things, I said. But yes, the other night was certainly part of it. Sarah, I spoke honestly about my concerns. You humiliated me in front of our entire family, I interrupted. You stood up at a party and told everyone that I'm the only one who hasn't made you proud. You didn't speak honestly about your concerns. You delivered a public verdict on my worth as a person. Claire reached across the table toward me. Sarah, I'm sure Dad didn't mean... Stop, I said, pulling my hand away. All of you, just stop. Stop making excuses for him. Stop pretending that what happened was okay. Stop acting like I'm overreacting. You are overreacting, Dad said, his voice rising slightly. I expressed disappointment in your choices, and now you're running away across the country like a child. I'm running away? I laughed, but it came out bitter. I'm finally running towards something. For the first time in my life, I'm making a choice based on what I want, not what you want. What I want is for you to live up to your potential, Dad said. What I want is for you to stop wasting your education and your intelligence on a job that doesn't challenge you or provide for your future. My job saves lives, I said, standing up from the table. I help families stay together. I help kids find stable homes. I help people navigate systems that are designed to fail them. But none of that matters to you because it doesn't come with a 6-figure salary and a corner office. Money isn't everything, Dad said, but it's how we measure success in this country. It's how we ensure security for our families. Whose security? I asked. Because I'm pretty secure in my values. I'm secure in my purpose. I'm secure in the knowledge that I make a difference in people's lives. The only thing I'm not secure about is my place in this family. The kitchen fell silent except for the sound of the air conditioning cycling on. Mom was staring at her plate, tears in her eyes. Claire and Marcus looked uncomfortable, unsure whether to intervene or escape. I think, I said quietly, that we need to be honest about something. I have never been the daughter you wanted, Dad. I don't make the kind of money you value. I don't have the kind of career you respect. I don't live the kind of life you can brag about to your friends. Sarah, let me finish, I said, my voice steady now. I've spent 32 years trying to be someone I'm not, trying to earn approval that was never going to come. I've minimized my own happiness, my own sense of purpose, my own worth, because I thought maybe if I tried hard enough, I could become the daughter you wanted. I picked up my purse from the counter, but I can't, and I'm done trying. Dad stood up, his face flushed. If you leave like this, if you run away to Portland without trying to work things out, don't expect us to welcome you back with open arms." The threat hung in the air like a challenge. For a moment, I felt that familiar fear, the terror of being cut off, of being truly alone. But then I remembered how alone I'd felt sitting in this very kitchen for years, watching my siblings receive the love and approval I'd never earn. "I'm not running away," I said. "I'm walking toward a life where I'm valued for who I am, not punished for who I'm not." I headed for the door, then turned back. "And Dad, I don't expect you to welcome me back. I expect you to continue being exactly who you are. The difference is, I won't be here to disappoint you anymore." I left the house and sat in my car in the driveway for a long time, shaking. Through the kitchen window, I could see my family still sitting at the table, probably trying to process what had just happened. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Hi Sarah, this is Maria Santos from Portland. I just wanted to welcome you to the team officially. I have a good feeling about this." I typed back, "Thank you. I have a good feeling about it too." For the first time in days, I smiled. 3 weeks couldn't come fast enough. The following week passed in a blur of apartment hunting, job preparations, and avoiding my family. I found a small one-bedroom apartment in Portland's Hawthorne district through a virtual tour, exposed brick, hardwood floors, and a view of the city skyline. It was perfect, and more importantly, it was mine. I'd taken a few days off work to handle the logistics of moving, but I found myself dreading the conversations that would inevitably come. My coworkers at the Chicago Department of Children and Family Services had been supportive but shocked by my sudden decision to leave. "You're one of our best caseworkers," my supervisor Janet had said during our final meeting. "Are you sure this is what you want?" "I'm sure," I'd replied. "I need a fresh start." The truth was more complicated than that. I needed to find out who I was when I wasn't constantly trying to measure up to someone else's expectations. I needed to discover what my life could look like when I stopped apologizing for my choices. My phone had been suspiciously quiet. No calls from my parents, no texts from Claire asking to meet for coffee. Even Marcus had stopped his concerned check-ins. The silence felt both liberating and terrifying. Thursday afternoon, I was packing books when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Claire standing on my front steps, looking nervous and determined. "Hi," she said when I opened the door. "I brought coffee." She held up a bag from my favorite coffee shop, and despite everything, I felt a pang of affection for my sister. She'd always been the peacemaker, the one who tried to smooth over family conflicts with small gestures and careful words. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. "Though I have to warn you, the place is a disaster." My studio apartment looked like a tornado had hit it. Boxes were stacked everywhere, and I'd been living off takeout for days. Claire picked her way carefully through the chaos and set the coffee on my small dining table. "Portland, huh?" she said, looking around at the evidence of my imminent departure. "This is really happening. It's really happening," I confirmed, opening the coffee. "Thank you for this, by the way. I've been surviving on gas station coffee for 3 days. Claire sat down across from me, and I noticed she looked tired. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her usually perfect hair was slightly disheveled. "I've been thinking about what you said at dinner," she began, "about how we've been making excuses for Dad, and about how you've never felt like you belonged." I sipped my coffee and waited. Claire had always been careful with her words, especially when it came to family dynamics. "I think you're right," she said quietly. "I think we have been making excuses for him. I think we've been telling ourselves that he means well, that he's just trying to motivate you, that he doesn't really mean the things he says. But he does mean them," I said. "That's what I finally realized. He means every word. He really does think I'm a disappointment." Claire nodded slowly. "I've been replaying things in my head, conversations from over the years, and I'm starting to see patterns I never noticed before." "Like what?" "Like how he always found reasons to miss your school events, but never missed mine or Marcus's. Like how he talks about our careers with pride, but talks about your job like it's a phase you'll grow out of. Like how he introduces us to his friends differently." I felt a mix of vindication and sadness. "You noticed that?" "I noticed, but I told myself it didn't mean anything. I told myself you were being too sensitive, or that you were imagining things." Claire's voice was getting softer. "I was wrong. I'm sorry." The apology hit me harder than I'd expected. "It's not your fault, Claire. You and Marcus aren't responsible for Dad's behavior." "No, but we're responsible for our own. We could have stood up for you. We could have called him out when he said things that were cruel. We could have supported you instead of making you feel like you were alone." I stared into my coffee cup, thinking about all the times I'd sat at family dinners feeling invisible, all the times I'd swallowed hurt feelings because I thought I was being too sensitive. The thing is, I said, I don't think he's a bad person. I think he genuinely believes that his way of seeing the world is the only way. He thinks success means money and status, and he can't understand why I've chosen differently. But that doesn't make it okay, Claire said. You don't get to humiliate your child in public just because you disagree with their choices. No, I agreed. You don't. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, sipping our coffee and watching the late afternoon light filter through my windows. Finally, Claire spoke again. I'm going to miss you, she said. I know we haven't been as close as we should have been, but I'm going to miss having you here. I'm going to miss you too, I said, but I think this is what I need to do. I need to find out who I am when I'm not constantly trying to earn approval that's never going to come. I think you're brave, Claire said. I don't know if I could do what you're doing. You don't have to, I said. You fit here. You belong in this family in a way I never did. But what if I don't want to belong to a family that treats people the way Dad treated you? The question hung in the air between us. I could see that Claire was genuinely struggling with this, that my decision to leave was forcing her to confront things she'd been avoiding. That's something you'll have to figure out, I said. But please don't let my situation ruin your relationship with Dad. You and Marcus have something good with him. Don't throw that away because of me. It's not just because of you, Claire said. It's because of what's right. It's because of who I want to be. After Claire left, I sat in my half-packed apartment thinking about family loyalty and the courage it takes to stand up to people you love. I thought about the difference between keeping the peace and enabling bad behavior. I thought about the weight of expectations and the freedom that comes with walking away from them. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Claire told me she came to see you. I wanted to say I'm sorry too, for not standing up for you, for not seeing how hard things have been for you. I hope Portland is everything you want it to be. I typed back, thank you. That means more than you know. Another message. Will you let us know how you're doing? I know things are weird right now, but you're still my sister. I will, I replied. I promise. As I continued packing, I felt something shifting inside me. The anger and hurt were still there, but they were making room for something else. Hope, maybe, or just the possibility of hope. In 2 weeks, I'd be starting over in a new city, with a new job, with a chance to build a life that felt authentically mine. For the first time in years, I was excited about the future. The moving truck arrived on a Tuesday morning, exactly 1 week before my flight to Portland. I stood in my studio apartment, watching 2 men load my entire life into boxes and furniture pads. Everything I owned fit into a small moving truck, a sobering reminder of how little I'd accumulated in 32 years. You sure you don't want to keep anything here? Asked Mike, the lead mover. You know, in case you change your mind? I'm sure, I said, though my voice wavered slightly. I'm not coming back. The words felt final, like a door closing on one chapter of my life and opening to another. I'd given my landlord notice, transferred my utilities, and changed my address with the post office. There was no going back now, even if I wanted to. My phone had been unusually quiet all week. No calls from my parents, no texts asking about my moving plans. The silence felt deliberate, like a standoff where nobody wanted to be the first to blink. Around noon, as the movers were loading the last of my furniture, I heard a car pull up outside. Through the window, I saw my mother getting out of her sedan, carrying what looked like a casserole dish. Mom, I said, opening the door before she could knock. What are you doing here? I brought you lunch, she said, holding up the dish. I thought you might be too busy to eat. Linda Harrison looked older than her 58 years in the harsh sunlight. Her graying hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore the kind of comfortable clothes she reserved for gardening or cleaning house. She looked small and fragile standing on my doorstep. Come in, I said, stepping aside. Though there's nowhere to sit. The furniture's already on the truck. Mom looked around the empty apartment with sad eyes. I remember when you first moved in here. You were so excited about having your own place. I was, I said. I was 26 and convinced I was going to change the world. You did change the world, Mom said quietly. Maybe not in the way your father expected, but you made a difference. All those families you helped, all those children you kept safe, that matters. I felt tears prick my eyes. It was the first time in weeks that anyone in my family had acknowledged the value of my work. Thank you, I said. I needed to hear that. Mom set the casserole dish on the kitchen counter and turned to face me. I need to say something, and I need you to listen. I nodded, bracing myself for whatever was coming. Your father is a good man, she began, and I felt my defenses rising. But he's also a stubborn man who doesn't know how to admit when he's wrong. He grew up in a different time, with different values, and he's never learned to see success as anything other than money and status. Mom, Let me finish, she said, holding up a hand. I've watched him dismiss your achievements for years, and I've made excuses for him because I love him and because I didn't want to rock the boat. But what he said at the party was unforgivable. I stared at her, surprised by the steel in her voice. I told him that, she continued. I told him that he'd gone too far, that he'd hurt you in a way that might not heal. And you know what he said? He said you were being too sensitive, that you'd get over it. That sounds like Dad, I said. It does, and that's the problem. Mom's voice cracked slightly. I've been married to your father for 35 years, and I love him deeply. But I've also enabled his behavior by not standing up to him when he was wrong. The admission hung between us like a confession. I could see how much it cost her to say it. I should have defended you, she continued. All those times he dismissed your accomplishments. All those times he made you feel small. I should have spoken up. I should have been your advocate instead of his enabler. Mom, you did your best. No, I didn't. I took the easy way out. I chose peace over protection, and I let my daughter suffer because of it. Tears were streaming down her face now. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I'm sorry I failed you. I found myself moving toward her, wrapping my arms around her small frame. We stood there in my empty apartment, holding each other while years of unspoken hurt finally found their voice. I love you, Mom, I whispered. I've never doubted that. I love you too, she said, pulling back to look at me. And I'm proud of you. I'm proud of the woman you've become, the work you do, the choices you've made. I should have said that years ago. You're saying it now, I said. That's what matters. Mom wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Your father doesn't know I'm here. He thinks if we ignore this situation, it will blow over and things will go back to normal. They won't, I said. I won't. I know, and maybe that's for the best. Maybe some things need to break before they can be fixed properly. We talked for another hour, sitting on the floor of my empty apartment, sharing stories and memories I'd never heard before. Mom told me about her own dreams of being a teacher, dreams she'd set aside when she married Dad. She told me about the fights they'd had behind closed doors, about the times she'd wanted to defend me but hadn't found the courage. I want you to be happy, she said, as she prepared to leave. Even if that means being far away from us. Even if that means your father never understands. I want to be happy too, I said. For the first time in my life, I think I might actually achieve that. After she left, I stood in my empty apartment feeling lighter somehow. The conversation with Mom hadn't fixed everything, but it had given me something I'd been missing, validation that my feelings were justified, that my decision to leave wasn't an overreaction. That evening I got a call from Marcus. I heard Mom went to see you today, he said. How was it? Good, I said. Really good, actually. We said some things that needed to be said. I'm glad. Listen, I wanted to call because I've been thinking about what Dad said at the party, and I realize I need to apologize. Marcus, you don't... Yes, I do. I was standing right there when he humiliated you, and I didn't say anything. I just stood there like a coward while he tore you down in front of everyone. I could hear the guilt in his voice, and I felt a pang of sympathy for my younger brother. You were put in an impossible position, I said. It was your party, your moment. I don't blame you for not wanting to cause a scene, but I should have said something, even if it was just later, privately. I should have told him what he did was wrong. Have you told him now? There was a long pause. Yes, actually. I went to see him yesterday. I told him that what he said was cruel and unfair, and that he owed you an apology. How did that go? About as well as you'd expect. He said I was being manipulated by your dramatics. He said you were using emotional blackmail to get attention. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Of course he did. Sarah, I want you to know that I don't agree with him. I think you're brave for leaving. I think you're brave for choosing a career that matters to you, even if it doesn't pay well. I think you're brave for being true to yourself when the rest of us have been trying to be what Dad wants us to be. Thank you, I said, feeling tears welling up again. That means everything to me. I'm going to miss you, Marcus said, and I hope someday Dad realizes what he's lost. After we hung up, I sat on the floor of my empty apartment and cried, not from sadness, but from relief. The conversations with Mom and Marcus had given me something I hadn't expected. The knowledge that I wasn't alone in my perspective, that other people in my family could see the dysfunction I'd been living with for years. I picked up my phone and called Claire. Hey, she said when she answered. How's the packing going? It's done, I said. The truck left this afternoon. I fly out on Sunday. So this is really happening. It's really happening. Claire, I need to ask you something. Okay. When I'm gone, don't let Dad rewrite history. Don't let him convince you that I left because I'm unstable or attention-seeking or ungrateful. What happened at that party, what he said, It really happened, and it was really wrong. I won't let him rewrite it, Claire said firmly. I promise you that. Good, because I have a feeling he's going to try. Sarah, can I ask you something? Are you scared? About starting over in a new place with no support system? I thought about the question for a moment. Yes, I said honestly. I'm terrified, but I'm more terrified of staying here and spending the rest of my life trying to earn love that's never going to come. That makes sense, Claire said. I think you're doing the right thing. As I hung up the phone, I realized that leaving my family wasn't just about escaping my father's disappointment. It was about finding out who I could be when I stopped defining myself in opposition to his expectations. It was about discovering what my life could look like when I stopped apologizing for taking up space. Sunday couldn't come fast enough. Sunday morning arrived gray and drizzly, typical Chicago weather that matched my conflicted emotions. I stood in my empty studio apartment with 2 suitcases and a carry-on, taking one last look around the space that had been my home for 6 years. My phone buzzed with a text from my Uber driver. Outside in 2 minutes. This was it. No dramatic airport scenes, no last-minute reconciliations, just me, my luggage, and a one-way ticket to Portland. As I loaded my bags into the Uber, I caught sight of a familiar car turning onto my street. My heart stopped. It was Dad's silver BMW, but instead of stopping, it drove slowly past, and I saw him look toward my building before continuing down the street. Was that someone you know? The driver asked, noticing my expression. My father, I said, getting into the back seat. I think he was checking to see if I'd really left. Did you want to flag him down? I watched the BMW disappear around the corner. No, I said. I don't think there's anything left to say. The ride to O'Hare was quiet. I stared out the window at the city I'd called home for my entire life, memorizing landmarks and neighborhoods I might not see again for a long time. The skyline looked different somehow, less imposing, and more like a collection of buildings I was leaving behind. At the airport, as I stood in the security line, my phone rang. Claire, I know you're probably already at the airport, she said, but I had to call. I'm just going through security, I said, moving forward in line. I wanted to tell you that Marcus and I talked to Dad this morning. We went over there together. Oh, I wasn't sure I wanted to hear about this conversation. We told him we thought he owed you an apology. We told him that what he said at the party was wrong, and that driving you away was the worst possible outcome. And he said you were being dramatic. He said if you wanted to waste your life playing social worker in Portland, that was your choice, but he wasn't going to pretend to be proud of it. The words hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd expected them. I see. Sarah, I want you to know that Marcus and I don't agree with him. We told him that. We told him he was being cruel and stubborn, and that he was going to lose you forever if he didn't change. What did he say to that? He said maybe that would be for the best. He said maybe you needed to learn what the real world was like without family support. I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar ache in my chest. Even now, even with me literally leaving the state, Dad couldn't find it in himself to show any warmth or regret. I'm sorry, Claire said. I hoped he might surprise us. I didn't, I said, but thank you for trying. It means everything that you and Marcus stood up for me. We should have done it years ago. You're doing it now. That's what matters. After I hung up, I made it through security and found my gate. The boarding area was mostly empty. It was an early flight, and Portland wasn't exactly a popular destination for Chicago tourists. I bought a coffee and sat down, pulling out my phone to check my messages one more time. There was a text from my new supervisor in Portland. Safe travels. Maria and I are excited to meet you tomorrow. Your first family is already looking forward to working with you. The message reminded me why I was doing this. In less than 24 hours, I'd be back to work, helping families navigate impossible systems, making a real difference in people's lives. It was work that mattered, even if my father couldn't see it. Now, boarding Group A for Flight 1247 to Portland, the gate agent announced. I gathered my things and joined the line, my heart racing with a mixture of anxiety and excitement. As I handed my boarding pass to the agent, I thought about the letter I'd written to Dad but never sent, the one where I'd tried to explain my choices and defend my life. Maybe it was better that I'd never sent it. Maybe some conversations weren't worth having. The plane was small, and I had a window seat toward the back. As we taxied for takeoff, I looked out at the Chicago skyline one more time. Somewhere out there, my family was going about their Sunday morning routines. Mom was probably making breakfast while Dad read the paper. Claire might be reviewing case files for the week ahead. Marcus could be hitting the gym or meeting friends for brunch. They would go on without me, and I would go on without them. For the first time in my life, that felt like a relief rather than a tragedy. The plane lifted off, and I watched the city grow smaller below me. I thought about the scared little girl who'd spent her childhood competing for scraps of approval, The teenager who'd hidden her poetry because it wasn't practical enough. The young woman who'd chosen social work despite knowing it would disappoint her father. All of those versions of myself had led to this moment, sitting on a plane, flying toward a new life that I'd chosen entirely for myself. I pulled out my phone and opened a new text message to Maria Santos, my new supervisor. Just took off from Chicago. Thank you again for this opportunity. I can't wait to get started. The response came quickly. We're lucky to have you. Get some rest on the flight. Tomorrow is going to be a big day. I smiled and put my phone away. For the first time in years, I was looking forward to a big day. I was looking forward to challenges that would test my skills, rather than my patience. I was looking forward to working with people who valued dedication over salary, impact over status. As the plane climbed higher, leaving Chicago behind, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, genuine excitement about the future. I didn't know what my life in Portland would look like, but I knew it would be mine, in a way my life in Chicago never was. The scared little girl who'd spent her childhood chasing approval was still inside me somewhere, but she was finally ready to stop running after people who would never catch her when she fell. Instead, she was ready to learn how to catch herself. 3 months later, I was sitting in my new office in Portland, reviewing case files and sipping coffee that actually tasted good. One of many small improvements in my daily life. The rain was coming down outside, the kind of steady Pacific Northwest drizzle that I'd grown to love. It felt cleansing somehow, like the city was constantly washing itself clean. My phone rang, and I saw Claire's name on the display. We'd been talking regularly since I'd moved, but her calls usually came in the evenings, not during the workday. Hey, I said, answering on the second ring. What's up? I have news, she said, and there was something different in her voice. Excitement, mixed with nervousness. Are you sitting down? I'm sitting. What kind of news? I quit my job. I nearly dropped my coffee. You what? I quit. I gave my 2 weeks notice this morning. Claire had been at her law firm for 8 years, working her way up from associate to partner. It was everything she'd worked for since law school. Everything Dad had bragged about to his friends. Why? I asked. What happened? Nothing happened. That's the problem. I realized I was miserable, Sarah. I've been miserable for years, but I was so focused on meeting expectations that I never stopped to ask myself if I actually wanted the life I was building. I leaned back in my chair, trying to process this. What are you going to do? I'm moving to Denver. I got a job with a public defender's office. The pay is about 60% of what I'm making now, but I'll actually be helping people who need it, instead of helping corporations avoid paying taxes. I felt a smile spreading across my face. Claire, that's amazing. I keep thinking about what you said about choosing purpose over profit. It took me 3 months to work up the courage, but I finally did it. How did Mom and Dad take it? There was a pause. About as well as you'd expect. Dad said I was throwing away my career to chase some idealistic fantasy. He said I was making the same mistake you made. And Mom? Mom surprised me. She said she was proud of me for having the courage to change course. She said she wished she'd done the same thing when she was my age. I thought about my mother, who'd given up her teaching dreams to be the supportive wife Dad expected her to be. Maybe it's not too late for her to make some changes too. Maybe not. She's been different since you left, Sarah. Quieter around Dad, more willing to disagree with him. I think watching you stand up for yourself gave her permission to do the same. We talked for another 20 minutes about Claire's new job, her plans for the move, the apartment she'd found in Denver. When we hung up, I sat in my office feeling proud of my sister and amazed at how much had changed in just 3 months. My intercom buzzed. Sarah, your 2 o'clock is here, my assistant said. Send them in. The door opened, and Maria Santos walked in with a woman I didn't recognize, someone in her 40s with tired eyes and worn clothes, carrying a manila folder. Sarah, I'd like you to meet Rebecca Martinez, Maria said. She's dealing with a housing situation, and I thought you might be able to help. Of course, I said, standing up and extending my hand. Please, have a seat. As Rebecca settled into the chair across from my desk, I saw something familiar in her expression, the same look I'd worn for years, the exhaustion that comes from fighting battles that feel impossible to win. Tell me what's going on, I said gently. I'm being evicted, Rebecca said, her voice barely above a whisper. My landlord says I'm behind on rent, but I have receipts showing I paid. He's trying to force me out so he can raise the rent for new tenants. Do you have those receipts with you? She nodded and opened her folder, pulling out a stack of carefully organized papers. As she spread them across my desk, I saw months of documentation, every payment recorded, every interaction with the landlord noted. This is excellent record keeping, I said. You've done everything right. But it doesn't matter, does it? Rebecca asked. People like me don't win against people like him. I looked at her across my desk. This woman who reminded me so much of myself, someone who'd been told that her efforts didn't matter, that the system wasn't designed for people like her to succeed. That's not true, I said firmly. We're going to fight this, and we're going to win. For the next hour, I walked Rebecca through her options, helped her understand her rights as a tenant, and connected her with a legal aid attorney who specialized in housing discrimination. By the time she left my office, she was standing taller, her voice stronger. "Thank you," she said at the door. "I didn't think anyone would believe me." "I believe you," I said, "and more importantly, I'm going to help you prove it." After she left, I sat back in my chair and thought about the conversation I'd had with Dad 3 months ago, about how my work didn't matter because it didn't pay well. I thought about all the Rebecca Martinezes I'd helped over the years, all the families I'd kept together, all the children I'd helped find stable homes. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I opened it and saw a photo of a young family standing in front of a small house, holding keys and smiling widely. The message read, "Sarah, this is the family you helped 6 months ago in Chicago. We got the house. Our kids have their own rooms for the first time ever. Thank you for not giving up on us. The Johnsons." I stared at the photo, feeling tears prick my eyes. This was why I did this work. This was what success looked like. Not a corner office or a 6-figure salary, but a family with a stable home, children with their own beds, parents who didn't have to choose between rent and groceries. I forwarded the photo to Claire with a message. "This is what I do. This is why it matters." Her response came immediately. "I get it now. I finally get it." That evening, I walked home through the rain to my apartment in Hawthorne. I'd fallen in love with the neighborhood, the bookstores and coffee shops, the food trucks and community gardens, the way people said hello on the street even if they didn't know each other. My apartment was small but cozy, with plants on every windowsill and art from local artists on the walls. I'd bought a comfortable couch and a dining table where I could work on case files in the evenings. For the first time in my adult life, my living space felt like home, rather than just a place to sleep. I made dinner, pasta with vegetables from the farmer's market, and ate while reading a book I'd bought from the bookstore down the street. Simple pleasures that had taken on new meaning since I'd stopped trying to prove my worth to people who would never see it. Around 9 p.m., my phone rang. "Marcus." "Hey, stranger," he said. "How's life in hipster paradise?" "Pretty great, actually," I said. "How are things in Chicago?" "Complicated. Claire told you she quit?" "She did. I'm proud of her." "Yeah, me too. Dad's pretty shook up about it, though. First you leave, now Claire's throwing away her career." His words, not mine. "How are you handling it?" There was a pause. "Honestly, it's got me thinking about my own choices. I took the Goldman Sachs job because it's what Dad wanted, but I'm not sure it's what I want. What do you want?" "I don't know yet, but I'm starting to think that's okay. Maybe it's okay not to have everything figured out at 26. We talked for another half hour about his job, his relationship, his growing doubts about following Dad's prescribed path to success. When we hung up, I realized that my decision to leave hadn't just changed my life. It had given my siblings permission to question their own choices. Later that night, I sat on my couch with a cup of tea, looking out at the rain-soaked street. I thought about the scared woman I'd been 3 months ago, packing her bags and fleeing a family that had never understood her. I thought about the confident woman I was becoming, someone who knew her worth wasn't determined by other people's approval. My phone buzzed with one last text of the day. It was from Mom. "Saw the photo you sent Claire. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. I'm proud of the work you do and the woman you've become. Love you." I typed back, "Love you too, Mom. Thank you for saying that." As I got ready for bed, I thought about Dad, probably sitting in his recliner reading the Wall Street Journal, still convinced that money was the only measure of success. Part of me felt sad for him. He was missing out on knowing the daughter I'd become because he was too stubborn to see past his own narrow definition of achievement. But mostly, I felt free from the weight of expectations I could never meet, free from the exhaustion of trying to earn love that came with conditions, free to build a life that felt authentically mine. Tomorrow, I would help more families navigate impossible systems. I would make a difference in people's lives, one case at a time. I would continue building a career that mattered, surrounded by colleagues who valued compassion over profit. And if that disappointed my father, well, that was his loss, not mine. For the first time in my life, I was enough, not because someone else told me so, but because I finally believed it myself. The rain continued to fall outside my window, washing the city clean and preparing it for a new day. I fell asleep to the sound of it, peaceful and grateful for the courage it had taken to start over. In the morning, there would be new challenges, new families to help, new ways to make a difference. But tonight, I was exactly where I belonged, in a life I'd chosen entirely for myself. Finally free from the need to be anyone other than who I was.